There was a woman who once lived in a huge mansion with a swimming pool in LA. Now they say she's quietly living on government support in the States. And today, the woman who took every last bit of her father's fortune was sitting right here in this hair salon. It's September. The light in Apgujeong in September is truly different. The stiff, sharp glare of summer is gone, and the slanted afternoon light quietly slips in. Inside the salon, warm orange light gently reflects off the silk walls, and the only sound is the soft snip of scissors. Today, this chair has no number. This seat without a number. Today, I ended up seeing everything because of it. It feels like the silence someone left behind is still alive inside this mirror. This is seat 0. The first time I saw Jina was in 1989. She was about to get married. Jina. Even after moving to America, she kept that same name. By around 2010, she would have been in her early 60s. The first time she came in here, holding her mother's hand, the whole salon went quiet for a moment. "Let's do the engagement and wedding hair and makeup here at this salon," Jung-suk Unni had said. Jina stood quietly behind her mother, looking around the salon. It was her first time, but she didn't seem awkward or out of place at all. Well, that's just how women from Apgujeong are. After that, she came every month on the same dates, always with her mother. Jung-suk Unni would always arrive first and say, "The driver is parking the car," while chatting away. When the mother and daughter sat side by side, the mirror showed two faces that looked so much alike. After Jina got married and started her newlywed life in LA, Jung-suk Unni began coming alone more often. She would say, "Jina is in America now," but her usual bright chatter had faded. We just thought, her daughter just got married and moved far away, so she must be feeling lonely. Since it was a hair salon, we didn't pry too much. We'd just say, "You're alone today," and let it go. And then, after some time, Jina also started coming alone. "It's my mom's Memorial Day," she said very briefly. September 2010, that autumn day. Jina flew in from LA. As soon as she landed in Incheon, the first place she went was the columbarium. She placed a single chrysanthemum there. She never told me how long she stayed. After leaving the columbarium, she came straight to Apgujeong. No reservation, no phone call. Her feet simply remembered the way. The path her mother had first led her by the hand. The path where her mother's voice still lingered. "Let's do the engagement and wedding hair and makeup here." The salon door opened. I greeted her warmly. "Oh my, Jina!" It was the kind of greeting old friends give each other. Jina sat down in the same chair she used to share with her mother. This time, she was alone. As I slowly draped the gown around her shoulders, that touch needed no words. I picked up the scissors, then paused. I leaned in slightly and said in a low voice, "Jina, Mia has an appointment today, in 30 minutes. In the mirror, Jina slowly lifted her eyes and looked at me. She didn't say a word. A moment later, she turned her gaze back to her own reflection in the mirror. The bankruptcy came after the IMF crisis. As the new town boom faded, the construction industry was hit first, and Dongjin Construction couldn't hold on. The news reached LA sooner than expected. Her father called her himself. It was one of the rare times he called his daughter directly. Jina still remembers that voice. It was short. There was no explanation and no apology. It'll be hard to send money from now on. That was all. To explain Gina's house, I first have to tell you what kind of house it was. There's a place in LA called the Java Market. Think of it like Dongdaemun Wholesale Clothing Market in Korea, but several times bigger. Her father bought the house of the #1 seller in that market as a wedding gift. It was a house with a swimming pool in a neighborhood close to Beverly Hills. But when you stepped inside, the living room was a museum. Medieval European furniture bought from Jewish dealers, paintings brought directly from Paris auctions, an antique piano, a treasure-grade violin, Chinese porcelain, European dishes, medieval jewels. The house was one giant private museum. And as if that wasn't enough, they even built a separate antique warehouse in the annex. Back then, rich daughters had a common hobby: antiques. Jina was like that. She travelled to Europe often. London auction houses, Paris dealer alleys, Amsterdam antique markets. Taking a plane was as natural as taking a taxi now. But it was only after the bankruptcy that she realised that museum-like house was actually cash in the bank account. It was usable property. She divorced her husband. She couldn't hold on long after her father's bankruptcy. Jina was left alone. At that time, working wasn't an option for her. She was a woman who had never earned money in her life. For someone who had lived with the name tag of someone's daughter, there were waitress positions, but she had never learned how to sit in that seat. So she started selling her assets one by one, starting from the warehouse. She emptied the warehouse and then moved on to the house. At first, small things, a set of dishes, one piece of furniture. That money lasted half a year. The next half year, she sold something else. Like that 1 year, 5 years, 10 years passed. She also downsized the house. Starting near Beverly Hills, she gradually moved farther away. Every time the things to sell decreased, her address changed. After 15 years, when there wasn't much left to sell, Jina was already living on the outskirts of LA. What must she have felt the day she sold the last painting? I didn't ask. In 2010, around the time she finished organising the last antiques, she also organised the house. The last place she settled was Diamond Bar, 1 hour east of LA. Not a bad neighbourhood, but when you know where she started from, that 1 hour feels very different. What must she have thought when she first filled out the US government assistance application? I didn't ask that either. But I do know this. It was 20 years. A woman who used to fly to Europe became someone who endured 20 years by emptying one artistic antique at a time from her museum-like house. A time spent enduring, without earning anything, only by losing. There's one more thing I should tell you about the way Jina spent her money. It wasn't just antiques. In 1992, Los Angeles burned. The riots sparked by the Rodney King verdict. The city was on fire for a week. And one of the places that burned the longest was Koreatown. Shops that Korean families had built from nothing, all of it inside those flames. Jina wrote checks, more than one. She donated to the Koreatown Rebuilding Fund, and she gave directly to people who'd lost their stores. Some she knew, some she didn't. Some of them just because they were Korean. That was her way. When she had money, she knew how to use it. She never thought twice about lending to friends either. Someone starting a business, someone who needed cash fast. she never once chased anyone down for repayment. If they paid her back, she accepted it. If they couldn't, she let it go. A lot of people came and went through Jina's house back then. The house with the antique warehouse attached, the living room with the vintage piano. People who ate her food, borrowed her money, came to her when they had nowhere else to go. Jina never thought of it as an investment. That was just how she lived. This seed sees that kind of person every once in a while. Someone who gives without keeping score. By Apgujeong standards, that's worth something. And then the world turned upside down. Her father's bankruptcy, the divorce, the antiques slowly sold off one by one. Somewhere in the middle of holding everything together alone, the money ran out completely. She still had a few things left to sell, but getting through the month in front of her, that was the problem. Then a phone call came. It was someone who had received one of those checks. Back in Koreatown, 1992. Nearly 20 years had passed. They asked how she was doing. Jina answered honestly. She said she couldn't pretend in front of that person. Help came. Not just from that one person. People who had borrowed money, people who had sat at her table, people whose names she could barely remember. The ones who could be reached, each sent a little. It wasn't a lot, but those small amounts added together kept her afloat until the US government assistance came through. Government assistance doesn't arrive the moment you apply. You file the paperwork, wait for review, wait for approval. And if you have nothing to carry you through that gap, you fall. But Jina didn't fall. The money she had given away years ago, without a single calculation behind it, filled in the space where she needed it most. Whether that made her feel grateful or ashamed, she said it took her a long time to figure out. And then came 2010. The assistance started arriving. A small house in Diamond Bar, a fixed amount deposited each month. It wasn't plenty, but it was something. And she lived on it. That September, it was her mother's Memorial Day. She bought a plane ticket, left a single chrysanthemum at the columbarium, and let her feet carry her down the road they already knew. Back to this salon. No reservation. She just came. Now I suppose I should talk about Mia. The fourth wife. She had her own name, of course, but almost no one ever called her by it. She preferred to go by the name of her clothing label. Mia. I suppose she thought it suited her better. The way she first crossed paths with Jina's father was through the third wife. Apparently, she wasn't easy to fit off the rack. Someone referred her to a seamstress who did custom work, and that seamstress was Mia. The woman who made the third wife's dresses ended up taking the fourth wife's place. Was Mia a bad person? I don't think so. When Jina's father collapsed, it was Mia who stayed. She went to every hospital appointment. There were nights she didn't leave the ward at all. She kept track of his meals, his medication, the questions that needed to be asked of the doctors before anyone else thought to ask them. Jina was in LA. Plane tickets weren't something she could buy easily anymore. Mia filled that space. Whether it came from love or calculation, I honestly don't know. And I'm not sure that distinction means much now, looking back. Jina's father registered Mia on the family register, set up a separate household in another part of the city. That's how it had been with the second wife, too, and the third. The main house belonged to Jung-suk, the eldest daughter's mother. The other households were always at different addresses. Mia was no different, except this time, something changed. Before he died, Jina's father transferred assets, a living gift, A building in Cheongdam-bung passed into Mia's name, along with a sum of cash. Legally, it was finished. The paperwork was done before he passed. Could Jina have fought it? She could have. Hired a lawyer, gathered the documents, filed with the court. But she couldn't have won. Mia was the legal wife. She was on the register. She had over 5 years of documented cohabitation. A living transfer made with the man's own consent wasn't something a court would unwind. What Jina could have claimed was her statutory inheritance share. But filing that claim costs money, and Jina, living on government assistance in America, didn't have it. So she didn't fight. Not because she couldn't bring herself to, but because she had done the math, and the math came up empty. That wasn't giving up. That was calculation. The kind only someone who has been alone for a long time knows how to make. And there was something else. Jung-suk had never blamed the woman. He was just too remarkable a man. She had held on to those words all this time. If her mother hadn't blamed her, how could the daughter? After becoming the 4th wife, Mia began going to the kinds of places that people in that world go. Fine restaurants, fine hotels, fine salons. That's how she found this one. She had made a reservation a month in advance. She couldn't have known what kind of seat she was walking into. The salon where Jina and Jung-suk had come together, spring after spring, autumn after autumn, for nearly 20 years. Where a mother had first brought her daughter by the hand to have her wedding hair done. And in front of that same mirror, Mia was due to arrive. In 30 minutes. The stylist didn't stop cutting. She knew she couldn't. Her hands kept moving, but through the mirror she caught Jina's eyes for just a moment. Briefly. Only briefly. Jina was looking out the window. September in Apgujeong, caught inside a long, tilting afternoon light. That day, for some reason, the light seemed to stay longer than it should. The salon hadn't changed. The hum of blow dryers, the sound of scissors, the low murmur of staff talking among themselves. Nothing was different. Except for one thing. The stylist's hands had grown careful. She was quieter than usual. Jina must have felt it. In the mirror, Jina was looking out the window. Rodeo Street in Apgujeong, September. The 2:00 sun slid across the glass fronts of the shops outside. People passed by. A woman carrying shopping bags, a man talking on the phone, someone pushing a stroller. Everyone going somewhere. 10 minutes passed. Jina pressed her hands together beneath the salon gown. The stylist pretended not to see. 20 years in this salon will teach you that. Knowing which things not to see. Your body learns it before your mind does. One of the staff walked toward the entrance. No particular reason, it seemed. She straightened a shelf that didn't need straightening. She just wanted to be over there, to keep the 2 women's paths from crossing. She was holding a space, quietly, in advance. A salon that has been in Apgujeong long enough knows these things without being told. Nobody gives the instruction. Nobody explains it. Everyone just moves. 20 minutes passed. The stylist's scissors were making their final passes. Jina's hair was nearly done. The salon door opened. It was Mia, a woman not quite in her 60s. You could tell the moment she walked in that she was someone who took care of herself. A Chanel tweed jacket, gold buttons, a Bottega Veneta Intrecciato bag in clay. Her step was unhurried. It wasn't the walk of someone visiting for the first time. It was the walk of someone who had been here before. She swept her eyes across the salon as she came in, the way you do when you're confirming you've arrived at the right place. A staff member greeted her. "Mia, welcome back." Mia smiled briefly. the easy exchange of people who already know each other.
The staff member led her to the other side of the salon, the opposite end from Jina. Mia walked over without hesitation. Naturally. She didn't know Jina was there. Jina watched through the mirror. Mia being draped in a gown, exchanging a few words with the staff, setting her handbag on the shelf. Every movement was easy. No discomfort, no uncertainty. She was already at home in the air of this place. And Mia looked only at her own mirror. Not once did she glance toward Jina. The stylist's scissors stopped, then started again, as though nothing had happened. Gina's shoulders dropped, just slightly. Something shifted in Gina's eyes in the mirror. She was trying not to cry. Her lips pressed together. Her jaw was set. But her eyes wouldn't listen. The stylist set down her scissors, stood behind Jina. Their eyes met in the mirror. Jina opened her mouth. Her voice was low, pressed down so it wouldn't shake. I spent 20 years selling off antiques from the house in LA my father bought me. Now I live on government assistance. That woman nursed him through his illness and walked away with a building in Cheongdam-dong. And now she's getting her hair done at the salon my mother and I came to together. The stylist said nothing. There was nothing she could say. She couldn't agree, and she couldn't disagree. There were no words that would help. So instead of words, she reached for Gina's hands, not her shoulders. She covered both hands through the gown, just rested them there on top of Gina's, without squeezing, just there. In the mirror, the two of them stayed like that. The other sounds of the salon continued, blow dryers, the low voices of staff, and from the other side, scissors, someone working on Mia's hair. How long did it last, I wonder? From the other side, the blow dryer went quiet. A staff member turned the mirror toward Mia. Mia tilted her head to one side, then straightened. That meant she was satisfied. A brief exchange followed, something about her next appointment. Mia stood up, took off her gown, picked up her bag, paid at the front. A staff member saw her out. The salon door opened, closed. Mia never knew that Jina had been there that day, that they had breathed the same air with only a mirror between them. She never knew. The stylist slowly lifted her hands from Gina's, picked up her scissors again. There were still a few finishing touches to make. Jina was looking in the mirror, and then she started to cry. It was different this time. Before, the tears had come quietly. Now, something broke through from her throat, a small, stifled sound that kept growing until it became a sobbing she could no longer hold back. Her shoulders shook. The gown darkened with tears. She was gasping for air. It was the kind of crying that fills a room, a lifetime of swallowed grief coming out all at once. The stylist set her scissors down again. The staff each found something to focus on more intently, pretending not to hear, pretending not to see. That was the most this salon could offer Jina, the only dignity it had left to give. Jina began to speak, looking at her own reflection, crying, her voice catching. My mother, I feel so sorry for her. Every time my father brought another woman home, she just stayed. She kept the house. She just stayed. I still don't know if that was wisdom or resignation. But what did she have left in the end? What did she have? Jina closed her eyes for a moment, then looked back at the mirror. My brother has buildings. Even after the bankruptcy, he still has his own company, something that doesn't disappear. I got money, and money runs out when you spend it. Why didn't I see that? Why didn't I see it then? To my father, a daughter was just someone to marry off. I thought he was good to me. But looking back, he just cleared me out of the way. The stylist said nothing, because not a single word of it was wrong. Jina let out a short laugh, the kind that comes in the middle of crying, almost a bitter sound. For 20 years, I sold off things I brought back from Europe, thinking something would change, thinking eventually it would be different. But nothing changed. It just got smaller, little by little, little by little. Do you know what I have left? A small house in Diamond Bar and government assistance. That's it. The salon went quiet. No blow dryers, no scissors. No one had said to stop, but everyone had. The stylist handed her a tissue. Jina took it. One wasn't enough. Silently, another was offered, and then another. Jina wiped her eyes, let out one long, trembling breath. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. Swollen eyes, a gown completely soaked through, and her mother's face, now utterly undone. Seat 0 has held on to what that mirror carried that day for a long time. It wasn't a woman falling apart. It was everything she had swallowed her whole life, finally breaking through. In this salon, in front of this mirror, for the very first time. Words she had never said in front of her mother came pouring out in the place her mother left behind, like something torn open. Inside the salon, quietly, the blow dryer started again, as if nothing had happened. Everyone began to move, slowly. Everyone began to move again, slowly. I'm not sure how much time passed. The salon found its rhythm again. Blow dryers, scissors, the low murmur of conversation. Jina was looking in the mirror. Her eyes were still swollen, but she wasn't crying anymore. The stylist picked up her scissors again, the final touches. Her movements were careful, slower than usual. It was her way of saying she wasn't in a hurry, that she would stay in this moment until Jina was ready to leave it. Jina knew, without a word being said. The scissors stopped. The stylist drew a comb through once. In the mirror, Gina's hair was finished. The stylist held up a hand mirror, showed her the back. Jina turned her head, to the right, to the left. She didn't say anything. Then she gave a small nod. It was a slight movement, but the stylist understood. Between people who have known each other a long time, that much is enough. The stylist set down the hand mirror,
lifted the gown from Jina's shoulders with both hands, slowly. The same hands that had rested over Jina's through that gown not long before. Jina stood up. She paused in front of the mirror for a moment, looked at her finished hair, the seat where she had come every spring and autumn with her mother, the seat where her mother would arrive first and say, "The driver's just parking, he'll be right up." Now just hers. Jina picked up her handbag, opened it, then closed it again. There was nothing she needed to take out. Her hands just needed something to do. The stylist walked ahead, toward the front desk. Jina followed. She moved through the salon slowly. It was an old space. Some things had changed, some hadn't. The angle of the lights, the color of the walls, and the mirrors. Jina looked around as she walked, without any rush.
When Jina reached for her wallet, the stylist said quietly, "Today, please don't worry about it." Jina paused. The owner shook her head gently and said again, "Jina, I really can't take anything today. Just, please take care going home." Jina looked at her for a long moment, then answered in a voice that was barely there, "Thank you." That was all. Nothing else came. Jina looked at the stylist. Just for a moment, two people who had known each other a long time shared something in this salon today. Whatever passed between them, I'll leave here. What is heard inside these walls should stay inside these walls. Jina opened the salon door. The Apgujeong afternoon came through, the slanted light, people passing by. Jina stepped out. The door closed. The stylist stood still for a moment. She looked at the closed door. The next client was waiting. The stylist turned, picked up her scissors. The salon began to move again. The salon was back to its own pace. Blow dryers, scissors. The stylist started on the next client's hair. But for just a moment, her gaze went to the window, the way it sometimes does, out of habit. She could see Galleria department store. It was a little distance from the salon, but the bus stop in front of it was visible through the glass. Jina was standing there, alone. She was holding her handbag with both hands, her head tilted slightly down, the posture of someone waiting for a bus. There was nothing unusual about it, and yet the stylist stopped cutting. She watched Jina standing there for a long time. She must have thought of the first day Jina walked into this salon, the day she came through that door holding her mother's hand. The days she stepped out of a car with a private driver waiting. A car where someone else opened the door. Spring after spring, autumn after autumn. And then the years when she started coming alone, only on her mother's Memorial Day. All of it seemed to be standing there at that bus stop. That bus stop. It's been there a long time in this part of Apgujeong. It was there when the new developments were going up, there in the year the bankruptcy came. The day a mother first brought her daughter by the hand to this salon, a bus stopped there too. What changed, if anything, is who gets on. Back then, Jina never took that bus. There was a car with a private driver, a car with someone to open the door. But today, she was waiting for the bus. Handbag held in both hands, head slightly bowed. The bus came. Jina got on, the doors closed, the bus pulled away. The stylist watched until the bus passed down Apgujeong Rodeo Street and disappeared from view. Her eyes had gone red. And then, very quietly, she said something to herself. There was a time when people in this country couldn't afford to eat, and she lived like none of that existed. A chaebor's daughter who moved through the world like she wasn't quite part of it. How did it come to this? How did it come to her taking the bus? The stylist stood there for a long time. There was no one who could answer that. It just happened this way. Jina took a window seat. The bus started moving. Apgujeong passed outside the glass. Galleria department store, Rodeo Street, a plane tree, old buildings, a cafe that hadn't been there before, and the Salon. Jina looked out the window. There had been days she moved through this street in a car with a private driver. Days she left the Salon side by side with her mother. Days the trunk was full of shopping bags. All of it was in this street somewhere, passing by outside the glass. The bus left Apgujeong behind. Jina turned to face forward. She didn't look back. She was on her way back to her relative's house. Her mother never blamed anyone. He was just too remarkable a man. Whether that was the right thing to think, or comfort, or resignation, Jina was looking out the window and probably not thinking anything at all, just sitting. The bus was quiet. The September afternoon light came in through the window at a low, tilted angle. It settled across Jina's lap. Seat 0 is recording this today. A woman who had come through these doors for decades left today on a bus. The woman who walked away with what remained of her father's estate never knew. Who had been sitting just on the other side of her mirror today? She never knew. And perhaps that is the coldest part of all. There was no malice in it. She simply didn't know. And when someone doesn't know, they can wound without feeling a thing. Today, this seat thinks it understands a little why her mother never blamed anyone. There was no one to blame. Not her father, not Mia, not the law, not the times. It just became what it became. Jina cried today inside this salon. She said things she had never been able to say in front of her mother. And then she got on a bus and went home. But I wonder, what did this story bring up for you today? Seat 0 is empty again, until the next person's truth comes to fill it. That is all this seat remembers for today. This was Seat 0.